When I started playing Limbus Company, I was expecting a dark story. However, I did not expect the story to be this dark and have such an impact. After playing for around 3 hours, I will say that I can already understand why this game has such a dedicated fanbase. There are things I really enjoyed about this game, and there are things that didn't quite work well for me, and a few other things that I'm still not really sure about. Here are my first impressions about Limbus Company. But before we get into it, Limbus Company is a gacha game developed and published by Project Moon. Most of the game is set in a place called the City, which shares a universe with Project Moon's previous games. Although, you don't really need to play them to understand what's actually going on. The story is presented in a visual novel style type of dialogue, and the gameplay consists in a turn-based type of combat, where you can chain skills to do damage. And based on how the chaining is done, you are allowed to deal more damage. However, in the earlier stages, you can skip everything by just clicking this one button. More about that later. The introduction of Limbus is easily my favorite part of the game so far. Right from the start, the game throws you into complete chaos. You wake up as Dante, a protagonist who has lost all of his memories and somehow has a clock for a head. Before you even have time to process what's happening, a buzz appears, introducing you the Sinners, and one of the game's core mechanics. Dante's ability to revive his allies by taking on their pain, or at least that's what I imagine his ability actually is. But yeah, the whole introduction constantly made me ask, what the f is going on? And I mean this in the best possible way, because it hooked me immediately and made me want to keep playing to find out more. The other thing that really surprised me was the community. This ended up being one of my most viewed streams with minimal effort to promote it, and every time I had a question, I almost always had the answer instantly. They explained mechanics without spoiling the story, and some story elements I didn't understand at first. Like for example, that the reason why Dante had a clock for his head is because he himself switched the head by the clock, which made learning the game much more enjoyable. As someone completely new to Limbus Company, that did make a big difference. I really like the stamina system as well. Instead of forcing you to spend your stamina on materials, you first have to convert it into another resource to actually be able to farm. And because that resource doesn't have a limit, as far as I'm aware, you can actually farm resources whenever you want. It feels like the game respects your time instead of making you log in just to farm all your stamina. Now, let's talk about what I didn't like. The biggest issue for me so far is the pacing. After such an incredible introduction, the story slowed down quite a bit. There were some moments where the dialogue felt like it dragged on longer than it needed to. The comedy definitely helped during those slower sections, and whenever the game introduced an important plot point, my interest immediately came back, but overall I thought the pacing after the opening wasn't nearly as strong. Besides the comedy moments though, the way the game introduced how Dante's ability worked genuinely made me feel uncomfortable, and I mean that in the best way possible. If a game like this wants to be respected by its dark concepts, moments describing how bad and painful Dante's ability actually is are very important. There are also a couple of things I'm still undecided on. The first is the combat. It definitely feels like there's a lot of depth going on there, but the game also lets you use the win rate button, and throughout most of the early fights you can just use that and be completely fine. Because of that, I don't feel like I've actually learned the combat system that much yet. Even if I do think the win rate button is pretty fun, I just haven't had to think very much yet. I'll still have to play further before I can judge whether it's genuinely fun or just a bit overwhelming at first. The second thing is the gacha system. From what I've seen, it has mechanics that sound very generous. You have a 1.9% rate to get a 000. A 000 is like a 5-star in your Oyo games or Wuthering Waves. And there's even a spark system for featured characters. The problem is that I don't know how many pulls the game actually gives players over time, and that's why I'm not really sure about it. If the game is generous with its premium currency, I think this could end up being one of the better gacha systems I've seen. But if pulls are scarce, then the system could end up feeling pretty punishing. It's simply too early for me to give a final opinion. So what actually are my expectations going forward? Honestly, they're about the same as when I started. I was incredibly excited to play this game for the first time, and the introduction really met that excitement, as you can see. Wait, so I'm bound to them? And the way I can regenerate others is by them torturing me? What the hell? After that, the pacing slowed down enough that my excitement settled a bit. But honestly, that's pretty normal for story-heavy light novel-style games, since oftentimes they need to spend more time building their world and characters than other kinds of games. I've also heard from a lot of people that the story really starts picking up around Canto 3, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that will actually go down. For now though, I'm definitely interested enough to keep playing the game. Once I finished Canto 3, unlocked more of the game systems, and spent enough time with the combat and gacha mechanics, I'll make a full review with my final thoughts. But for now, these are my first impressions of Limbus Company. If you want to see me play Limbus more as a new player, consider joining my next streams. And if you want to get pinged for those streams, join my Discord. Also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and tell me if you agree in the comments. And please, no spoilers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.